Them old bad dreams, been sleeping in your bed, and them old dark clouds been hanging around your head. But all your hard times vanish in the wind when those mighty clouds of joy come rolling in. That's okay. Little wimpy. It's okay.
Wimpy.
Good afternoon. Got it right. Yes, got it right. And how is everybody? Good. Is there anything anybody would like to tell us, share with us, ask for prayer for something, or anything like that? Anything? No, we're good. I hear the Schwentz have an offer on their house. This must be a good thing.
Yeah.
Good.
So far,
But do they have one?
house inspection, I think.
The inspection? Okay, good.
What?
You're not gonna move out?
We're just gonna rent somewhere here in Tustin is what we're
Yeah,
gonna go.
don't worry, they're not leaving.
We're
They're
not
just-
going
They're just
anywhere.
changing residences.
This is a purely financial decision.
Yeah. This is a really good time for those of you who don't realize that in Orange County, the prices are up right now and they may go through a down cycle, so this is really a good time.
Yeah, so it's just a good time for us. Our house being older is getting ready for a lot of work. And we're just not there to reinvest in it.
There you go.
We're not in a position,
No,
so.
not gonna put any more money into it. You know, I had a realtor friend look at the pictures, and she said, and their pool is clean, because apparently she's shown some houses where it was not looking very good.
That was the inspector yesterday, that was the new owner, it's a single gentleman who's gonna throw some parties, which it needs, it's ready for some life again. And that's what even the inspector said, wow, I haven't seen a pool this clean in a long time. And so and that was their concern, so was the concern. So thank you for your love and your thoughts.
Yes, we've been holding that sold in our minds.
Thank you.
Knew it would be just the right thing. So let's, having no other announcements, let's turn to page 6 in your hymnals. I like to get to this song at least once a month because it's one of my favorites. This is the day. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. Thank you. It's a beautiful day, and for those of you who like animals, apparently they're going to be having a petting zoo out there.
There's a llama.
There's a llama out there.
I know.
and possibly some baby goats. Baby goats are incredibly cute while they're young. Not so much when they're grown up, but when they're young, they're really adorable. And speaking of animals, I never think of animals as really having issues. Well, apparently geese have issues. Yeah, they just do. I was walking Kelly this morning, and of course there's babies everywhere. The cutest little baby geese in little flocks. Well, some of the geese didn't get to be parents, apparently, especially the guys. I guess the female picked somebody else. So this morning I witnessed a lone geese attack a couple with their babies and try to separate them from the babies, and they're going to kill the babies. And I thought, but we have issues. But the parents successfully defended their babies, and finally the lone goose went off squawking down the street. So it was very odd. I had no idea, but that's life. So afterwards, if you want to go pet animals, you're welcome to do so. So now let's just take a moment and get quiet. And let's put aside all of our own issues, whatever they may be. Any negative thoughts we may be harboring. Let's just let them go. Let's get back to that place inside of us where it's peaceful, tranquil, quiet, and filled with light. And today we have the courage to live in the promises of that which created us. Today we have the courage to believe. We have faith. We have the wherewithal to be love in the world. We have everything we need, absolutely everything we need, to carry out our mission and purpose here on planet Earth. As we gather together in the circle of light and love, we amplify and recommit to those values that we hold most dear. The values of compassion and kindness and acceptance and faith. These are who we are, and each and every day we go out of our way to demonstrate that that is the truth. And let us say together, and so it is, Amen. And before we go into our reading for today, I wanted to mention one other thing that just really got to me. I cry over stuff a lot. I see stuff on TV, I cry over it. Well, during the draft, the NFL draft, yesterday, there was rounds like 4, 5, 6, 7. The Seattle Seahawks drafted the first one-handed football player ever. Ever. And this was no charity thing. This kid is an amazing athlete. He was the most valuable player in the Senior Bowl. It was a congenital disease. He was born with a problem, and they had to amputate his hand at the wrist. And he is amazing. And his twin brother is already on the Seahawks. They are being reunited. They will play together, and they showed them side by side. They look so much alike, you could not tell them apart. But my heart just was so full because I was afraid maybe they wouldn't, no one would take him. He's drafted. He's going to play. So. Life is good. So as we begin our service, Lynn is our reader. Would you come up, Lynn? Let's give her a hand. Thank you.
And so I just wanted to mention, I'm looking for a reader for next week and in 3 weeks. So next week, it's I think the 6th, then Craig is going to do Mother's Day. And then the Sunday after that is open, and then Joe's going to do Memorial Day.
I'll do next week.
Next week? Thank you, Lisa. Okay. And Susan?
Oh, I was going to
You were volunteering as Sandra? I'm confused.
I'll take the next opening, be it in June, July, it's whatever.
In June. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I thought
All right, throw it out there, baby.
Pays to advertise.
you know, you don't have because you don't ask, right?
Exactly.
Now, this is from 1999. But it's always, I think it's always, these magazines, the Science of Mind magazine, doesn't matter what year they are, they're always, I think they're just high up. They're timeless. So this one is from a practitioner. Awakening, but this right here is from Taetsu Uno, and the book is River of Fire, River of Water. Awakening is dynamic, constantly evolving in accordance with life's reality, unfolding from ego self to compassionate self, from enclosed self to open self, from foolish self to enlightened self. And then from the Science of Mind, inner power that holds securely, inner eye that sees so clearly. So this little story is called A City Angel. The City of Angels, Los Angeles, has the reputation of being hard, uncaring, dangerous. And while I'm not minimizing the danger in this city, there is a heart that beats with a courageous, passionate throb beneath the asphalt jungle. On my way to work one morning, I was driving, my thoughts were absorbed by a workshop I attended the day before that taught us how to release the errors of thinking we had absorbed as youngsters. The workshop had touched something very tender and protected within me, and I was feeling unusually vulnerable. The sight of a disabled car and a dejected driver standing by the hood was all it took to trigger a rush of tears. Maybe for Lauren too. Chugging along the freeway at 15 miles an hour, surrounded by others on their way to work, I cried, wiped my eyes, and cried some more. This went on for a few miles before I noticed the driver in the car in front of me looking at me in his rear mirror. The eyes were not threatening. I could see compassion and concern in them. Slowly, in a sea of Volvos and Chevys, we inched our way towards the city, me crying, this stranger keeping a protective eye on me in his rear mirror. Finally, when the traffic stopped, he turned around in his seat, looked directly at me, and mouthed these words, "Are you okay? Can I help?" In the midst of a hectic weekday commute, one angel reached out to another with an unconditional, loving heart and broke the spell of separateness. I said, "Thank you," and waved that I was okay. He smiled. The traffic jam broke. We moved on. Another day, another blessing. And then there's the affirmation. I recognize the Christ in everyone I meet. I release any judgment based on past conditioning. I accept that God is everywhere present. I believe in the loving heart.
You know, that's what we forget when we see all the snarky comments posted on Facebook and different places, and we forget that there's a lot of nice people, lots of nice people in the world. As a matter of fact, I was telling Sandra yesterday, I said, I think there should be a new litmus test for everybody who's going to post something. And that test is, if you were standing right in front of the person you're talking about, looking them right in the eye, would you still say this out loud? And I bet you 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't. Because either because the person would be incredibly hurt or knock their block off. So, one of the other.
Facebook increased.
So we're starting a new series. Why do we come to Sunday celebration? Any ideas? Reminders? What else?
Because it's so wonderful to be around you.
Oh, well, thank you. What else? Why else do we come here?
Because we want to be with family.
Be a family. You know, celebrate our familyness. And it's funny, no one said learning, but that would be a good thing. Joe? To forgive all our sins. I'm afraid you wandered into the wrong church today. I'll be in the confessional later. Yes, if you want to buy an indulgence, just put your money in the box. There you go.
You're selling indulgences this week.
Yeah, there you go. There's a sale on them.
You've got an extra envelope in that basket, don't you?
So, yes.
I come here because I have come down to the bottom. I need to get filled back.
She needs to get filled up. Excellent. Yeah, filled up. So I really feel like that. It's a warm, fuzzy feeling, and we love it. Everybody here is very kind to each other. Everybody here looks after each other. I've been in churches where there's lots of conflict and obnoxiousness between people, and it's in Heartlight, which is, as I said, in its 10th year, we don't have that. So I really am impressed by that. And the key word, I think, is celebration. Celebrate who we are. Celebrate what we know. Celebrate what the world is. So as we acknowledge the beauty of God, sometimes I don't know that you remember to acknowledge the beauty of you. Do you? Because if you don't, remember what I've said before. Anything that's true of God is true of you. Okay? So there's this unconditionally loving presence that lives, moves, and has its being in you because God can't do a darn thing without you. You're the one down here at ground zero doing the work. You are beautiful because the God in you is beautiful. You're powerful because the God in you is powerful. You're brilliant because the God in you is brilliant. You are amazing because the God in you is amazing. Got it? Don't forget it. So as we come to accept this, we begin to also see beauty everywhere. So that incident that Lynn told us about was a moment of beauty. It was spiritual beauty between two strangers. So we do care about each other. And as we know, we expect to see beauty in our homes and our families and actually everywhere, because what's the saying? There's no spot where God is not. Just sometimes it's hard to see. Our journey is about self-realization. So what better inspiration can we find than Paramahansa Yogananda? Most well-known book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. It was published way back, I shouldn't say that too, way back in 1946. And continues to be reprinted to this day. Some of you may have been to the Self-Realization Fellowship temple in Encinitas. There is more than one temple. Gene Willman went there on occasion and really enjoyed it. There's a temple in Fullerton and LA and other places. The book truly is an autobiography, so we get some fascinating glimpses into his childhood. We sometimes forget that really wise people were children. They were little kids. They had tantrums. They had moments of not being perhaps the most pleasant child. They had moments of being selfish, unenlightened, ticked off. They were children. This goes for everybody, including Jesus, was a child. So I like the idea of talking about childhood stories because it reminds us of an innocence and a faith that was easier for us when we were very young. Without a tendency to judge. Children don't judge. You can introduce a kid to somebody of any color and they'll start playing. They don't care. They could even be a different language and they'll figure out a way to play with each other. And the other reason I like these childhood stories is because it's a tradition the world over to have origin stories about our spiritual teachers. We like them if they at least hint about how special they were going to be. We don't always hear or read these stories because later writers sometimes don't think that the childhood stories were sufficiently heroic or impressive. Or in the alternative, if they paint a picture of their hero as too human, right? Too prosaic, they skip it. So if the childhoods of great leaders and teachers don't support what the biographers want to prove, they kind of skip them, leave them out. So how often have you read, any of you, about the early childhood of Jesus? This big. He's just, the poor kid went from like 0 to 13 and 13 to 30.
You never heard of it?
Nothing, right? Probably never. Well, we know he had to have been a child, all right, because he was born and he had to grow up. He had to be a 2-year-old. He had to be a 5-year-old. Can you just imagine? Yeah. And his childhood was anything but boring and unremarkable, let me tell you. It's just that he was still learning about who he was. He didn't one day at the age of 3 go, Mom, Dad, I'm the Christ. I'm the Messiah. I'm here. He didn't know who he was. He had his ups and downs, just as any of us do as we're growing up and understanding the world. How many of you did things when you were a child that you wouldn't do now? Yeah. Okay, we learn. So he wasn't all holy and wise as a child. He got to be that way. Naturally, those accounts, I don't think would surprise you, are not part of the canon, what we call the canonized scripture. They aren't part of the Bible as formulated by church authorities. But there's much more. You are familiar with Gnostic texts. I've talked about Gnostic texts, and thank heavens they were found, and they continue to be found in different parts of the world. It contains some fascinating things, and they're called the infancy Gospels. Yes, infancy. They have fascinating accounts of Yeshua's childhood. For example, in one of the stories, we encounter Jesus as a little boy and learn that he was already doing miracles. Some good, some not so good. One Sabbath, he was down by the river, as boys will be down by the river, playing in the mud, having a good time. And he decided, because the river was kind of not really polluted, but not drinkable water, he would purify it. So he was doing that. Strangely enough, it was forbidden to work miracles on the Sabbath. Now why? We do not know, but it was forbidden to do anything, including miracles. But being quite the independent little boy, he said, like I care, I'm gonna take care of this river. So having done that and being a kid, he started playing in the mud some more, and he made little figurines of sparrows and little animals and things. He was making his own toys. Well, someone saw the child doing what he wasn't supposed to do, so that person, being the village busybody, went right to Joseph to complain. Do you know what your son is doing? He is out there doing miracles. You need to go talk to that boy. And Joseph, who probably was like, oh, again, here we go again. Can't do a thing with this kid. So we can only imagine what Mary and Joseph had to go through with this very precocious child. And he was probably saying, oh, Lord, not again. So he goes to talk to Jesus, and he says, basically, son, you can't do this stuff on the Sabbath. Well, have you ever had a young child who didn't really want to listen to you? Who contradicted you? Who perhaps talked back? Yes. Well, little Jesus got annoyed. The first thing he did was turn all the toy sparrows into real birds, and they were flying around. And he said to the birds, remember me, it was I who brought you into being. And then he looked at his dad, and he was like, I purified the river. Don't chide me for that. I'm sure he didn't say chide, but one of those things. Don't be pissed off at me. So there are quite a few stories along those lines. They're very short little segments, and they're not all flattering. How many of you think that Jesus could do no wrong? You'd be wrong. he apparently got angry at another kid and said something along the lines of, I wish you'd just shrivel up and die. And he did. Now, I will hasten to add that he brought the kid back to life eventually, but he just said that, and his word was already so powerful, that poor kid shriveled up and died. And I'm sure the parents said, "Really, Jesus? Really?" Once he realized what he was doing and what he shouldn't be doing, he restored anybody he had harmed. He brought them back to life. And of course, soon his good deeds outnumbered his bad deeds, because he was growing up, getting smarter. In one story, he accidentally breaks his clay water jar. Now, these jars are very important because that's how you get the water from the river back to your house. He broke it, but instead of zapping it back together, he just uses his robe to carry water, and oddly enough, it doesn't leak. Just carrying the water. While the other kids, who are beginning to kind of look at him as a hero, they all break their jars on purpose. And then they try to use their robes. Well, it doesn't work for them. The water's gone by the time they get home. So he's like, really? He fixes all their water jars. I need to put these back together. Now, don't do everything I do. So, as he grew up to be quite an exceptional teacher and a maker of miracles. In the same vein, we read in Autobiography of a Yogi about Yogananda's childhood before he knew who he was. And that's what happens. It's before we know who we are. He was an incredible teacher. He brought yoga, really, to the Western world. There was very little knowledge of it. There was some, but not a lot, not a great deal of knowledge. But he was the first to come and stay in the Western world and say, I'm going to bring my gifts to this world. So he tells the story of a time when he was 8 years old, and his older sister, Uma, had a boil on her leg. I really don't know what a boil is, to be honest with you. I'm just something bad. So their mother supplied ointment for Uma to put on her leg. But it seems little, and his name then was Mukunda. Little Mukunda was a little jealous of all the attention she was getting. Why are you so worried about my sister? So he said, well, give me some of that ointment, and he put it on his arm. And Uma said, why are you putting ointment on your arm? You're not the one with a boil. To which he replied with childish arrogance, well, tomorrow I'm going to have a boil on my arm. And the ointment won't even work on you. Yours will be 10 times bigger. Of course, Uma says, yeah, right, Mukunda. That's ridiculous. Fast forward. Next day she awakens, guess what? Her boil is 10 times bigger. And Mukunda has a boil on his arm in the very place he rubbed the ointment. Understandably freaked out by this, Uma goes to her mother and says, Mom, Mukunda's doing spooky stuff again. He's become a necromancer, which at that time was sort of an evil doer, evil magician, evil wizard. She was truly afraid of her brother. So thus, as Yogananda writes, gravely, Mother instructed me never to use the power of words to do harm. I've always remembered her counsel. My boil had to be surgically treated, leaving a scar. On my right forearm is a constant reminder of the power in man's sheer words, those simply and apparently harmless phrases spoken with deep concentration had possessed sufficient hidden force to explode like bombs and produce definite injury. I understood later that the explosive vibratory power in speech could be wisely directed to free one's life of difficulties and thus operate without scarring and without rebuke. So at the tender age of 8, he discovered that you could speak a thing with conviction, and so it shall be. Can you imagine when you were 8, did you ever say anything mean when you were 8 years old? Did you ever say anything mean when you were 8 years old? Yes, okay. Are you glad it didn't come true, that it didn't come to pass, okay? Like, go boil your head, we're just glad that didn't happen. He matched his thought with his emotion. So a while later, there was the kite incident. How many of you have read or seen The Kite Runner? The Kite Runner, okay. It's about a sort of a competition. I won't go into it in great detail. There's kite fighting, and there's strings, there's sharp objects. Kites fall down, and people have to run and get them and go grab them up. So Hassan, one of the characters, knew where they would fall. This knew. So one day, Uma and her little brother are watching this sort of event, and Mukunda is babbling on about he's enthralled with the great mother, he's in the form of the goddess Kali, she's now united with him, he has this profound new spiritual direction, and he's so excited, and it's way cool, and his sister's like, yeah, right, enough. So he knows it's a pretty powerful revelation, but his sister, who's used to all his hijinks, is not convinced. She says, and you'd think she'd have learned by now not to dare her brother to do anything. She says, I suppose you could make one of those kites come right to you. And in the book, Yogananda writes, an unequivocal conviction came over me that fulfillment would crown any of my prayers uttered in that spot at that moment. So I said, yep. Probably said that in some other language. Yep. His sister laughed at him, and young Mukunda began his silent prayers to possess the 2 kites that were being flown within his sight. So, what do you think happened? The first kite, string clipped, could have gone anywhere, but as they watched, it blew toward them, and there was a thorny plant, cactusy thing nearby, and the kite snagged on it, and he plucked it off and said, got it. Uma, being Uma, said, it's a coincidence, come on. I bet you couldn't do it again. Well, she says, if it's 2 kites, then I'll believe that you have a relationship with the Divine Mother, with Kali. So standing in the complete conviction of his true relationship with the Divine, he knew it would bring him whatever he asked for. So Mukunda summoned the second kite. I guess you can probably imagine what happened. Came right to him, landed on the same freaking cactus. And poor Uma, dismayed, ran away in fear, saying, Mom, Mom, he's doing it again. When we read stories like this, we're reminded of how much